Ambassador Minjun Park rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the massive meeting hall. The Grand Assembly Chamber on Concordia Prime Station was built to impress. 47 different species sat in curved rows that rose up like a giant amphitheater. Holographic displays floated in the air, translating every word into dozens of languages. The whole place smelled like recycled air and alien body chemistry. Minjun had been sitting in this same chair for 6 months. 6 long months of negotiations about the new expansion accords. These rules would decide how every species could claim new star systems and build colonies on empty worlds. For humanity, this mattered more than almost anything. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. Humans needed room to grow. The problem was simple. The 3 most powerful species in the galaxy wanted to keep all the best worlds for themselves. Clause 47, announced the Vrelox ambassador, his voice coming out as a deep rumble. Kurthax was nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick scales, and his species had conquered half their home galaxy before joining the assembly. Any species discovering a habitable world must submit to a capability assessment by the Assembly Council before beginning colonization. Minjun felt his stomach drop. He glanced at Dr. Hana Choi, his chief advisor, who sat beside him. She was already typing rapidly on her data tablet, her face tight with concentration. "What does that mean in practice?" asked the Prixian delegate, a small being whose species controlled only 6 worlds. The Zenthari representative answered, her multiple arms gesturing smoothly. The Zenthari were merchants and traders, more interested in profit than war, but just as ruthless. The council would evaluate whether your species has the technology, resources, and experience to properly develop a new world. If not, the world could be assigned to a more capable species. "Assigned to you, you mean," muttered someone from the back rows. The Vrelox ambassador ignored this. "It is simply a matter of efficiency. Why waste a beautiful world on a species that lacks the ability to use it properly?" Minjun leaned toward Hana. "Analysis?" She showed him her tablet screen. "It's a power grab. The council has 5 permanent members. 3 of them are Vrelox, Zenthari, and Kelthari. They would control which species get which worlds. We would need their permission for everything." "And they would never give it," Minjun said quietly. "Not unless we gave them something they wanted in return." For the next 3 hours, Minjun tried to negotiate. He proposed amendments. He suggested alternative systems. He pointed out that the original assembly charter promised equal rights to all member species, regardless of size or power. The Kelthari senior representative finally responded. The Kelthari were an ancient species, old when humanity was still living in caves. They spoke slowly and carefully, as if teaching children. "Young Ambassador Park, your passion is admirable. But surely you can see the wisdom in this approach. Humanity has barely mastered jump drive technology. You have only 32 colonies. Perhaps it would be better to learn from those with more experience before claiming more worlds." "We learn by doing," Minjun replied, "just as every species does." "And sometimes young species make terrible mistakes," Kurthax added. "We are trying to protect you from your own inexperience." The Zenthari representative made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. "Please, Kurthax, let us be honest. The humans should be grateful for whatever worlds they can get. There are species here with thousands of years of space flight. Humanity is still very new to all of this." Something cold settled in Minjun's chest. He looked around the chamber. Most of the major species were nodding in agreement, but in the back rows, where the smaller delegations sat, he saw different expressions. The Prixians looked angry. The Yoro delegate appeared sad. The Brontali representative was staring at his hands. These smaller species understood. They had been accepting scraps from the powerful for generations. Minjun stood up slowly. The movement caught everyone's attention. In 6 months of negotiations, he had always remained seated, always stayed polite and patient. "Dr. Choi," he said clearly, "please gather our documents and data tablets." Hana blinked in surprise, then understood. She began collecting their materials. "Ambassador Park?" The Kelthari representative sounded confused. "The session is not yet concluded." "It is concluded for humanity," Min-jun said. His voice was calm and steady. "For 6 months we have participated in these negotiations in good faith. We have compromised. We have listened. We have tried to find common ground. But this clause makes it clear that some species in this chamber do not believe in equal rights. They believe in a hierarchy where the powerful make rules for the powerless." The chamber had gone completely silent. "Earth did not travel to the stars to become a client species," Min-jun continued. "We did not build ships and explore the galaxy just to ask permission from others to exist. The human delegation hereby withdraws from these negotiations. We will pursue our own path forward." Kurthax rose to his full, imposing height. "You cannot simply walk away from the assembly." "We are not leaving the assembly," Min-jun said. "We are leaving these negotiations. There is a difference. We will continue to honor our existing treaties and obligations. But we will not sign an agreement that treats us as children who need permission to grow." He turned to his delegation. 8 humans stood and gathered their belongings. Not one of them looked frightened, though Min-jun knew they must be. They were taking an enormous risk. As they walked toward the exit, Min-jun heard gasps and shocked voices behind them. The chamber erupted in chaotic discussion. Some delegates were shouting, others were demanding order. Min-jun did not look back. He kept walking with his head high and his steps steady. His team followed. Just before they reached the door, Min-jun glanced to his left. The Prixian ambassador was watching them. There were tears on her small face, but she was smiling. She raised one hand in a gesture that might have been a salute. The doors closed behind the human delegation, cutting off the noise from the chamber. In the quiet corridor outside, one of Min-jun's junior diplomats let out a long breath. "Sir, what happens now?" Min-jun looked at his team. "Now we show the galaxy that sometimes walking away from a bad deal is the strongest thing you can do, and we wait to see who follows." Deep in his gut, Min-jun felt certain that they would not be waiting long. The transport ship carrying the human delegation back to their embassy station was quiet. Too quiet. Min-jun sat in the main cabin and watched his team. Some stared out the windows at the stars. Others checked their data tablets nervously. Everyone was wondering if they had just made a catastrophic mistake. "We are going to get so much criticism," said Ambassador Lee, one of the junior diplomats. "Earth's government is going to ask why we threw away 6 months of work." "We threw away nothing," Dr. Hana Choi said firmly. She was reviewing her notes, her fingers moving across her tablet screen. "We proved that humanity will not accept second-class status that is worth more than any treaty that treats us as inferiors." "But are we strong enough to stand alone?" Lee asked. "The Vreloks have 300 military fleets. The Zenthari control most galactic trade. The Kelthari have treaties with almost everyone. What do we have?" Min-jun finally spoke. "We have something they forgot about. We have relationships with species they ignore." Hana looked up and smiled slightly. "The medical aid we gave to the Yoro when that plague hit their worlds. The engineering assistance we provided to the Brontali colonies," added another diplomat. "The educational exchanges with 12 different civilizations," Min-jun said. "We have been building friendships while the powerful species were busy building empires. Now we will see if those friendships matter." 24 hours later, they had their answer. The Prixian delegation announced they were withdrawing from the negotiations. Their statement was brief and powerful. "We stand with humanity's principle that sovereignty cannot be negotiated away. The Prixian Federation will not participate in creating a system designed to keep smaller species in their place." By the next morning, 4 more species had withdrawn: the Yoro, the Brontali, the Talani, the Vreshk. Each issued similar statements about dignity and equal rights. On Concordia Prime, the Grand Assembly descended into chaos. General Kakresh of the Vrelok's Strategic Command stood in his operations center and watched the diplomatic disaster unfold on multiple screens. He was a military officer, not a politician, but he understood strategy, and this situation was rapidly becoming a strategic nightmare. "Status report," he demanded. His intelligence officer, a younger Vrelok named Kakathin, pulled up holographic displays. 5 species have withdrawn from the Expansion Accords negotiations following humanity's exit. The mathematics are clear, General. The Accords require approval from 2/3 of Assembly member species. With these withdrawals, we have lost quorum. The negotiations cannot proceed. Can we convince them to return? We are trying. But there is a larger problem. Kathin brought up another display, this one showing a web of connections between different species. Our intelligence teams have been analyzing human diplomatic activity over the past 5 years. We missed something important. The display showed Earth at the center, with lines connecting to dozens of other species. Medical aid here, trade agreements there, technology sharing, cultural exchanges, educational programs. They have been building a network, Kakaresh said slowly. Yes, General. While we were focused on military strength and territorial expansion, the humans were making friends. They helped the Yoro survive their plague crisis. They taught the Brontali how to improve their colony infrastructure. They opened their universities to students from 20 different species. They did not do this for profit or strategic advantage. They did it because they wanted to help. Kakaresh made a disgusted sound. Sentiment. Weakness. Perhaps, Cokthin said carefully, but it has given them influence we did not anticipate. Another officer spoke up. General, Xanthari intelligence is reporting something more concerning. 17 minor species have been conducting quiet trade discussions with human commercial representatives. If humanity establishes a separate economic coalition, it could disrupt Xanthari control over multiple markets. Kakaresh felt a cold sensation. How did we not see this coming? We did not think it mattered, Cokthin admitted. Humanity controls less than 1% of galactic economic output. Their military is small. Their territory is limited. By every traditional measure, they should be irrelevant. But they are not irrelevant, Kakaresh said. No, General, they are not. The Kelthari Council convened an emergency session. Elder Thalin, who had been a council member for 40 standard years, listened as his colleagues argued and blamed each other. This is a disaster, declared one counselor. The minor species are questioning our leadership. Let them question, snapped another. What can they actually do? We control the assembly apparatus. Thalen raised one hand and the chamber fell silent. He was old even by Kelthari standards, and his words carried weight. You are missing the point. This is not about control. This is about legitimacy. Explain, demanded the first counselor. The assembly was founded on principles, Thalen said slowly. Equal representation, sovereign rights, cooperation for mutual benefit. Over time, we have allowed those principles to become mere words, while power decided everything. The humans have reminded the galaxy what those principles actually mean. They are naive children, someone said. Perhaps, Thalen replied, but naive children sometimes ask uncomfortable questions. Why should the powerful make all the decisions? Why should discovery rights be subject to approval by those who might want to steal them? These are questions the smaller species have wanted to ask for decades. The humans gave them courage. A Xanthari merchant prince arrived at Earth's embassy station 3 days after the walkout. Zalthon was one of the consortium's most influential traders. His visit was officially diplomatic, but his message was clear. Ambassador Park, he said, his multiple arms moving in gestures of apparent friendship. This situation is unfortunate. Surely we can find a compromise that brings humanity back to the negotiations. Min Jun served tea, a human custom he had introduced to many alien visitors. What kind of compromise do you suggest? The capability assessment clause could be modified, perhaps made less strict. In exchange, humanity could agree to certain trade preferences that would benefit the consortium. So we accept a slightly better version of second-class status, and in return, we give you economic advantages. Zalthon's translator made a sound like laughter. Ambassador, please be realistic. You cannot simply ignore the existing power structure. Trade restrictions could make life difficult for human colonies. It would be unfortunate if medical supplies became harder to obtain or if shipping costs increased dramatically. Min Jun set down his teacup carefully. Merchant Prince Zalthon, humanity survived ice ages. We survived plagues that killed millions. We survived wars that nearly destroyed our entire civilization. We learned patience. We learned that short-term pain is acceptable if it prevents long-term injustice. Can the consortium say the same? Zalthon left without an agreement. That night, Min Jun received a secure communication. It was from the Prixian ambassador using an encrypted channel. Ambassador Park, representatives from 12 species wish to meet with you, quietly, away from Concordia Prime. We believe it is time to discuss an alternative. Min Jun smiled. An alternative to what? An alternative to accepting whatever the powerful species decide to give us. We want to discuss the possibility of a coalition. Species committed to protecting each other's rights. Are you interested? Very interested, Min Jun said. Send me the coordinates. As the communication ended, Hana entered his office. More threats from the Vrelocks. They are conducting military exercises near our colonies. Let them exercise, Min Jun said calmly. We have more important work to do. We are building something new. The pressure began exactly 1 week after humanity's withdrawal from the negotiations. First came the trade restrictions. Zenthari commercial houses announced temporary delays in shipping to human colonies. Critical supplies took twice as long to arrive. Prices increased. Independent traders who worked with human merchants received warnings about potential consequences. Then the Vrelocks began their military exercises. 3 full battle fleets positioned themselves near human territory, close enough to be threatening, but not close enough to violate any treaties. They practiced invasion maneuvers and broadcast their exercises on public channels so everyone could watch. The Keltarii were more subtle. They circulated diplomatic messages suggesting that humanity was attempting to divide the assembly, that Earth's real goal was to create chaos and seize power while everyone was distracted. Some species believed these rumors. Ambassador Min Jun sat in his office and read the daily intelligence reports. Dr. Hana Choi brought him another cup of tea, which had become their ritual during stressful times. The pressure is working on some species, Hana said. The Talani are considering returning to the negotiations. They depend heavily on Zenthari trade routes. I cannot blame them, Min Jun replied. They must do what is best for their people. What about what is best for our people? Asked Ambassador Lee, who had joined them. Earth's government is receiving complaints from colonists who cannot get medical supplies. The delays are causing real problems. Min Jun was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision. Contact Minister Jiwoo Kang on Earth. Tell her it is time for the broadcast. Minister of Foreign Affairs. Jiwoo Kang was a small woman with steel in her spine. She had been waiting for this moment. The broadcast went out on all public galactic channels, translated into every major language. She stood in front of Earth's blue and green image, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Citizens of the galaxy, I am Minister Jiwoo Kang, speaking on behalf of humanity. Many of you have heard rumors about Earth's withdrawal from the Expansion Accords negotiations. I want to explain our position clearly. We do not seek to divide the Galactic Assembly. We do not want to create chaos or seize power. We simply believe in the founding principles that the Assembly was built upon. All species, regardless of their age or size or military strength, deserve equal dignity and sovereign rights. When we discovered that the proposed accords would require us to ask permission before expanding to new worlds, we had a choice. We could accept this system and hope that the powerful species would be generous, or we could stand for the principle that discovery rights belong to those who make the discoveries. We chose principle over convenience. We will always make that choice. To the species who face pressure because you support these same principles, we say this: you are not alone. Standing up for what is right is never easy, but it is always worthwhile. History will remember not who was most powerful, but who was most courageous. The broadcast ended. Within hours, the response flooded in. 18 more species issued statements supporting humanity's position. Most did not withdraw from negotiations, but they made their sympathies clear. On social media networks across dozens of worlds, citizens began discussing the issues. Young people especially responded to the idea that smaller species deserved equal treatment. The Prixian homeworld saw protests demanding that their government stay firm. The Yoro Parliament voted unanimously to support Earth. Even on some major species worlds, there were citizens who agreed with humanity's stance. On a remote mining station far from Concordia Prime, representatives from 13 species gathered in secret. Ambassador Min-jun and Dr. Hana Choi arrived quietly, without fanfare. The Prixian ambassador, Livera, welcomed them. "Thank you for coming. We have much to discuss." The meeting lasted for 16 hours. They talked about principles and practicalities. They discussed economic cooperation and mutual defense. They debated what kind of organization they wanted to create. Dr. Choi finally proposed the idea that crystallized their discussions. We should form the Commonwealth of Free Worlds, not as a rival to the Assembly, but as an organization within it, a voting bloc committed to protecting smaller species from exploitation. "A coalition of the weak?" asked the Brontali representative skeptically. "A coalition of the principled," Min-jun corrected. "Strength comes in many forms. Together we represent nearly 40% of Assembly membership. Our voices, united, cannot be ignored." "What about economic retaliation?" someone asked. "The Zenthari control too many trade routes." "Then we build new trade routes," Hana said. She pulled up economic data on her tablet. "Humanity can provide medical technology. The Yoro have agricultural innovations. The Brontali manufacture excellent industrial equipment. If we trade primarily with each other, we become less dependent on the major powers." "What about military threats?" This from a species that had faced Vrelok's aggression before. Min-jun addressed this carefully. "The Commonwealth would include mutual defense agreements. An attack on one member is an attack on all. Individually, we are vulnerable. Together, even the Vreloks would think twice." They argued details late into the night. But by the time the meeting ended, they had agreement. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds would be established. 23 species had committed to join. Back on Concordia Prime, Ambassador Kurthax of the Vreloks requested a private meeting with Min-jun. It was highly unusual, but Min-jun accepted. They met in a neutral conference room. Kurthax towered over the human ambassador, his scaled face difficult to read. "Ambassador Park, this situation has become complicated enough. I am here to offer you a final chance to be reasonable." "I am always reasonable," Min-jun said mildly. "Then be reasonable now. Return to negotiations. We can find a compromise on Clause 47. In exchange, the pressure on human colonies will end. Your people can go back to their comfortable lives." "And what about the other species who followed our example?" Kurthax made a dismissive gesture. "They will follow whatever example you set. If you return, most will return. The situation stabilizes. Everyone benefits. Everyone except the species who would still need permission to expand their own territories. The Vrelok's ambassador leaned closer, his voice dropping to a threatening rumble. Spacefaring civilizations that cannot protect their interests tend to disappear from history, Ambassador Park, sometimes through economic collapse, sometimes through unfortunate accidents. It would be tragic if humanity made that mistake. Minjun looked up at the massive alien without flinching. His voice remained calm and steady. Ambassador Kurthax, my species survived ice ages that buried continents in ice. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived wars where we used weapons capable of destroying our entire world. We learned something important through all of that. We learned patience. We learned that threats only work on those who are afraid. And we learned that bullies always believe their own threats more than their victims do. He stood and walked to the door, then paused and looked back. We have walked away from your negotiations. We will walk away from your threats too. The question you should be asking yourself is not what humanity will do, but what will happen when every other species you have bullied realizes they can walk away too. Minjun left the room. Behind him, Kurthax stood in silence, realizing for the first time that the humans might actually mean what they said. The next day, the Commonwealth of Free Worlds made its official announcement. 23 species, representing nearly 40% of Assembly membership. Their founding charter was simple and clear: mutual defense, free trade among members, and an absolute commitment that expansion rights belong to those who discover new worlds, not to those who are powerful enough to take them. The galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Assembly was paralyzed. 3 major trade agreements sat in committee, unable to move forward. Scientific cooperation programs were frozen because minor species refused to approve funding without changes to how resources were distributed. Even routine station maintenance required Assembly consensus, and suddenly every small disagreement became a fight. Elder Thalon of the Kelthari Council walked through the empty corridors of Concordia Prime late at night. He had served on the council for 40 years and had never seen anything like this. The carefully built structure of galactic governance was cracking. He passed a viewing window and stopped to look at the stars. How had it come to this? The Kelthari had always prided themselves on their diplomatic wisdom. They had positioned themselves as mediators, as the reasonable voices who could bridge differences between species. But now, minor species were taking their disputes to human arbitrators instead of Kelthari diplomats. His communicator buzzed. It was his economic advisor with the daily report. The situation is deteriorating, Elder. 2 more commercial agreements have collapsed. The Prixians are refusing to export their rare minerals except to Commonwealth members. The Yoro have closed their agricultural markets to Zenthari buyers. Thalen sighed. What about the humans? That is the interesting part. Our analysis shows that humanity controls only 0.3% of galactic economic output. They are economically insignificant. Then why does this feel like a crisis? Because of their position in 17 critical supply chains. Human medical research has produced vaccines for 4 diseases that were previously incurable. 56 worlds depend on those vaccines. Human agricultural techniques have increased crop yields on 30 planets. Human industrial processes are used in manufacturing facilities across 8 sectors. If we cut them off completely, we hurt ourselves more than we hurt them. Thalen closed his eyes. They made themselves valuable. Yes, Elder. And they did it quietly, without demanding recognition or payment. They simply helped whoever asked for help. Now those species remember. In the Zenthari Consortium's Central Analysis Facility, teams of economists worked around the clock to understand what had gone wrong. Merchant Prince Zalthon reviewed their reports with growing frustration. How did we miss this? He demanded. His chief analyst, a young Zenthari named Pelmoth, pulled up data projections. We were measuring the wrong things, Merchant Prince. We looked at total economic output, total trade volume, total resource control. By those measures, humanity is tiny and irrelevant. But they have made strategic investments in exactly the areas we ignored. Medical research that does not generate immediate profit, but builds goodwill. Agricultural assistance that costs them resources, but creates grateful partners. Educational exchanges that seem wasteful, but build relationships. Zalthon made an irritated gesture. Sentiment. Inefficiency. Perhaps, Pelmoth said carefully, but it has given them influence that money cannot buy. When the Commonwealth announced its formation, 23 species joined immediately. Our intelligence suggests another 15 are considering membership. If this continues, we could lose access to markets that generate 11% of our revenue. 11%? Zalthon was shocked. From species we considered irrelevant? Yes, Merchant Prince. It seems we have been so focused on controlling the largest markets that we forgot about the cumulative value of many smaller ones. On Earth, Minister Ji Wu Kang met with her advisory team. They were reviewing the plan they had developed 6 months before the negotiations even began. We knew they would never accept us as equals voluntarily, Kang said, reviewing the documents. So we prepared for this possibility. Ambassador Min Jun, attending the meeting via holographic link from his embassy station, nodded. We cannot outfight them or outtrade them. The Vrelocs have more ships, the Zenthari have more money, the Kelthari have more treaties. But we can make ourselves invaluable, Kang finished, and we can remind the galaxy what principles look like. Dr. Hana Choi brought up a display showing their diplomatic efforts over the past 5 years, medical aid to the Yoro during their plague crisis, engineering support for struggling Brontali colonies, open university programs for students from 20 species, technology sharing with anyone who asked, disaster relief, agricultural training, scientific collaboration. We spent 5 years building relationships, Hana said. We helped without asking for anything in return. We proved that humanity could be trusted. And we showed the smaller species that cooperation works better than competition. It almost seems naive, admitted Ambassador Li. Perhaps, Minister Kang said. But naive idealism backed by genuine action is more powerful than sophisticated cynicism backed by empty promises. A priority message interrupted the meeting. It was marked urgent and came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Min Jun opened it and his eyes widened. It is from Sergeant Kakthin of the Vrelocs military. She is a junior officer, but I know her. We served together on a joint peacekeeping mission 3 years ago. He read the message aloud. Ambassador Park, I am taking a serious risk by contacting you, but I believe it is necessary. Hardliners in Vrelocs Strategic Command are discussing a military demonstration near Earth. They believe that a show of force will make humanity negotiate. This would violate assembly law, but they are desperate. You have perhaps 2 weeks before they act. I am sending this because I remember serving alongside human soldiers. You treated us with respect even when we did not deserve it. I hope this warning helps. Please do not reveal my identity. The room fell silent. A military demonstration, Li said quietly. That could mean anything from flying ships near our colonies to actually attacking something. They would not dare, someone said. But they did not sound certain. Minister Kang made a decision. Release the Commonwealth Charter today, ahead of schedule. Let the galaxy see what we have built, and send a message to all Commonwealth members. Remind them that an attack on one is an attack on all. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds officially announced its formation that afternoon. The charter was broadcast across all galactic networks. The document was simple but powerful. 23 species, representing nearly 40% of Assembly membership, committed to mutual defense, free trade, and the protection of sovereign expansion rights. Any species could join if they agreed to the principles. There were no permanent council members, no hierarchy. Decisions would be made democratically. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On Concordia Prime, the Assembly Council called an emergency session. For the first time in 2 centuries, the dominant powers faced a genuine crisis that could not be solved with threats or money or military displays. The Vrelok's Strategic Command quietly canceled their plans for a military demonstration. General Kokresh had done the mathematics. If they attacked human territory, they would be at war with 23 species. That was a war even the Vreloks could not win. The Zenthari Consortium ran economic projections and realized that trade conflict with the Commonwealth would cost them more than compromise. The Kelthari Council convened in emergency session. Elder Thalin finally spoke the truth that everyone had been avoiding. We have lost control of the narrative. The question is no longer whether the humans will return to negotiations on our terms. The question is whether we will negotiate on theirs. A younger counselor objected. We cannot simply surrender our authority. Authority that is not respected is not really authority, Thalin said quietly. It is just the pretense of power. The humans have shown us something we forgot. True leadership comes from serving others, not from controlling them. Then what do we do? Thalin stood slowly. We do what we should have done months ago. We listen. We compromise. We remember that the Assembly was founded on principles, not on power, and we hope that humanity is generous enough to let us build something better. On Earth's embassy station, Ambassador Min Jun received a private communication request. It was from Elder Thalin himself. The old Kelthari appeared on the holographic display. He looked tired but determined. Ambassador Park, I would like to request a private meeting. Not a negotiation. Not a threat, simply a conversation between 2 beings who both want what is best for the galaxy. Would you be willing? Min Jun looked at the alien who had dismissed humanity as naive children just months ago. He saw something different now. He saw someone who was finally ready to listen. Yes, Elder Thalin, I would be willing. When would you like to meet? As soon as possible, Thalin said. We have wasted too much time already. The meeting between Ambassador Min Jun Park and Elder Thalin took place in a small private room on Concordia Prime. No recordings, no other diplomats. Just 2 beings trying to find a path forward. Thalin sat across from Min Jun, his ancient eyes studying the young human carefully. Finally, he spoke. Ambassador Park, I owe you an apology. When your delegation first arrived, I treated you as children who needed guidance. I see now that was arrogance disguised as wisdom. Min Jun inclined his head respectfully. You were following patterns that had worked for centuries. Sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see when patterns have become problems. Generous words, Thalin said, but we both know the truth. The Kelthari, the Vreloks, the Zenthari, we have ruled through precedent and assumption for too long. We created a system that served us well and told ourselves it served everyone well. Your species reminded us that there is a difference. What changed your mind? Min Jun asked. Thalin was quiet for a moment. I spoke with the Prixian ambassador. Livera told me something that I cannot forget. She said, for 3 centuries we attended assembly sessions knowing our voice did not matter. We spoke, but no one truly listened. The humans showed us that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own subjugation. That statement haunted me. It is a hard truth, Min Jun agreed. It is a shameful truth, Thalin corrected. The assembly was founded on beautiful principles: equality, cooperation, mutual respect. Somewhere along the way, we lost those principles. We kept the words, but abandoned the meaning. I have been on the council for 40 years, and I did not even notice. Min Jun poured tea for both of them, using the human ritual to create a moment of calm. The question is not what we did wrong before. The question is what we can do right now. Thalen picked up the teacup carefully. The Council is prepared to offer a genuine compromise. We will completely rewrite the expansion accords with equal input from all member species. The capability assessment clause will be removed entirely. That is a good start, Min-Jun said. What will replace it? We propose a new framework. Discovery rights are protected absolutely. The species that finds a habitable world has the right to claim it, regardless of their size or power. However, all species agree to joint monitoring programs to prevent ecological disasters and to protect any pre-spacefaring civilizations we might encounter. Min-Jun considered this. Who conducts the monitoring? Independent scientific teams drawn from multiple species, not controlled by the Council, transparent and open to review. Better, Min-Jun acknowledged. But the Commonwealth has conditions for returning to negotiations. I expected as much. What are your terms? Min-Jun pulled out a data tablet. First, all assembly votes must be public record. No more closed sessions where the powerful make deals behind closed doors. Second, rotating representation on the Council. Not just permanent seats for the major powers, but elected positions that include smaller species. Third, a formal charter that protects sovereign rights and makes them enforceable. Fourth, independent arbitration for disputes, not arbitration controlled by council members. Thalen reviewed the list carefully. These are significant changes to how the Assembly operates. They are a return to how the Assembly was supposed to operate, Min-Jun corrected gently. You are right, of course. Thalen set down the tablet. I will bring these terms to the Council. I believe we can accept them, though some members will resist. Change is always difficult, Min-Jun said, especially for those who benefited from the old system. Thalen looked at the young human with something like respect. You could have been more aggressive, Ambassador Park. With the Commonwealth backing you, you could have demanded much more. You could have tried to dominate the new order the way we dominated the old one. We could have, Min-Jun agreed. But humanity did not come to the stars to recreate the power games we left behind on Earth. We came to build something better. Over the following weeks, negotiations resumed. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. Representatives from all 47 species sat as equals. Smaller species spoke up, and their voices were heard. The Commonwealth members worked together, but they also worked with others, building bridges instead of walls. Ambassador Livera of Prixia stood before the Assembly and delivered a speech that many would remember. For centuries, my species accepted whatever the powerful chose to give us. We told ourselves it was wisdom to compromise, that it was practical to accept second-class status. But there is a difference between wisdom and fear. The humans taught us that difference. They showed us that standing up for principles is not naive or childish. It is the foundation of true civilization. She gestured to the human delegation. When Ambassador Park walked away from these negotiations, he did something remarkable. He did not threaten. He did not demand. He did not even ask us to follow. He simply said, "This is wrong, and we will not be part of it." That single act of principled resistance gave the rest of us permission to find our own courage. The new expansion accords took 3 months to complete. They were not perfect, no document ever is, but they were equitable. Discovery rights were protected, monitoring systems were established to prevent abuse, voting procedures became transparent. The Council was restructured to include rotating seats for smaller species. When the vote came, all 47 species approved the accords unanimously. The Commonwealth of Free Worlds remained active as an organization within the Assembly. It was no longer just a defensive coalition, but a caucus where species worked together on shared interests. More species joined. The Commonwealth's founding principles, mutual respect and equal dignity, began to influence how the entire Assembly operated. The changes were subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Minor species proposed legislation that actually passed. Scientific programs included researchers from across the galaxy, not just the major powers. Trade agreements became more balanced. Disputes were resolved through arbitration instead of threats. General Kakresh of the Vrellocs found himself in an unexpected situation. His military academy began receiving applications from species who had previously feared the Vrellocs. They wanted to learn from Vrellocs' tactical expertise. In exchange, Vrellocs officers attended human diplomatic training programs and learned conflict resolution methods they had never considered. Merchant Prince Zalthon discovered that treating smaller species as genuine partners instead of captive markets actually increased Zenthari profits. Fair trade built loyalty that coercion never could. Elder Thaalan worked with Ambassador Min Jun to establish the Assembly Principles Commission, an independent body tasked with ensuring that the organization's founding ideals remained alive in practice. It was composed of representatives from species of all sizes, with no permanent seats. 6 months after the new accords were signed, Minister Jiwoo Kang visited Ambassador Min Jun at Earth's embassy. They sat together in his office, drinking tea and looking out at the stars. "We have received offers from 3 different species requesting help with medical research," Kang said. "And the Bruntali want us to advise on their colonial expansion plans." "We should help them," Min Jun said. "Of course we will help them. But I wonder sometimes if we set the right example. Other species are starting to copy our approach. Offering aid without demanding payment, building relationships instead of demanding tribute. What if they become competitors?" Min Jun smiled. "Then the galaxy becomes a better place. That was always the goal, was it not? Not to make humanity dominant, but to make the galaxy more humane. You make it sound simple. It is simple. That does not mean it is easy." Min Jun set down his teacup. "Do you know what I think about sometimes? I think about Sergeant Cake Thin, that Vrellocs officer who warned us about the military demonstration. She risked her career to do the right thing. I think about Ambassador Lavera, who followed our lead even though she was terrified. I think about Elder Thalon, who was brave enough to admit he was wrong and work for change." "What is your point?" Kong asked. "My point is that the galaxy is full of good people trapped in bad systems. Our job is not to defeat those people or dominate them. Our job is to show them that better systems are possible, and then to help them build those better systems." Kang was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret walking away from those negotiations? It was an enormous risk." Min Jun thought about the question seriously. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the system was so broken that dramatic action was required, but I do not regret the action itself. Sometimes walking away from something wrong is the only way to build something right. And if they had not changed? If they had isolated us instead? Then we would have built the Commonwealth into something sustainable. We would have created our own alternative, our own way of doing things. We would have shown the galaxy that there was another path." Min Jun smiled slightly. "But I believe they would change, not because they are bad people, but because they are good people who had forgotten what good looks like. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to remind them." Far across the galaxy, on a small station where the Commonwealth held its regular meetings, Ambassador Lavera addressed the assembled delegates. "We have accomplished much, but our work is not finished. There are still species that face exploitation. There are still systems that favor the powerful over the just. But we have proven something important. We have proven that change is possible. We have proven that small species working together can stand up to the largest powers. And we have proven that principles matter more than strength." She paused and looked at each delegation. "The humans gave us a gift. Not technology or wealth or military support. They gave us something more valuable. They gave us the courage to believe that we deserve better. Now it is our responsibility to extend that gift to others." On Earth, in a small classroom, a teacher explained galactic history to young students. She told them about the Expansion Accords crisis. She told them about Ambassador Park walking away from negotiations. She told them about the Commonwealth of Free Worlds and the changes it brought. A student raised her hand. "Teacher, why did just walking away make such a big difference?" The teacher smiled. "Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to accept injustice, even when accepting it would be easier. The galaxy was built on a system where might made right. Ambassador Park reminded everyone that right is right, regardless of might, and that reminder changed everything. The stars continued to shine. Ships traveled between worlds. Species built and grew and learned. The galaxy was not perfect, it never would be, but it was better than it had been. And it would continue to improve, one principled choice at a time." Ambassador Min-Jun Park stood at his window, looking at those same stars, and knew that humanity's journey among them had only just begun.